Welcome everyone to our live cast. What we're going to be talking about is, of course, Trump's won the election, and we're going to talk about how is that going to be impacting you.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
What does this mean for you immediately? What is this going to mean for you in the next few months? And what is this going to mean for you in the next year? I'm going to talk mostly about legal immigration in this live cast. And then on the next one, we're going to be talking about if you're here unlawfully without a visa, also quote unquote illegal immigration. First of all, there is what is called a mandate where he feels the authority to go in and make a lot of changes. We're going to see in the first 90 days of his presidency. So when he first gets into office, I expect a series of executive orders to be placed. One of them last time was the quote unquote Muslim ban, preventing people from Muslim countries coming into the United States. If you're already in the United States, it's not something that you have to worry about. But if you're a professional, many doctors were traveling, that affected you having to travel, going back to Pakistan, going back to Egypt. If you're from a Muslim country, that's something that could affect you. This also brings an important point. Well, when will he get into office? So that's going to be on January 20th. So we do have some time before all of this goes into effect. And we want to take advantage of the fact that there is some time. If you have applications that you've been working on, get those filed now as soon as you can before he comes into office. Start working on those applications. Yes, there's the executive orders, but it takes time for him to appoint people. It takes time for him to get immigration judges. So it's not like all of this is going to just happen on day one. It's going to take time for things to be implemented. So use time to your advantage. So with the Muslim ban, there's going to be probably talk of, there's security concerns. We did see that happen last time. It was litigated in courts, expected to be litigated in courts again. Trump did put a lot of Republican judges into place while he was in office last time. So that is going to play into effect on how things are also going to be adjudicated with the courts. What else is expected to happen? So of course, the wall. He always loves to bring up the wall. I think this last administration did a disservice focusing on allowing people to come in and not focusing on people who had U.S. citizens who had applications filed for their spouses or other forms of humanitarian immigration within the United States. Huge backlogs happened. And instead, there was a focus on allowing people to come through the border. And of course, that was very unpopular. Now we're seeing the backlash of that now with the election. As part of the election, the immigration was one of the biggest things here. If there was more of a focus on U.S. citizens who were trying to get benefits for their spouses, some of those like I-601 waivers taking 5 years, and instead we see resources being diverted elsewhere, I think that was part of that backlash that we saw in this election. So they're going to try to build the wall on the border now. Trump can want that, but of course, who's going to pay for it? U.S. citizens, taxpayers, and who decides that? Congress. We didn't see the wall being built last time. We'll see if it will happen this time, if it's going to be built fully. It's going to cost a lot of money, and we're going to see what happens with Congress if they're going to be willing to foot the bill with that. Another thing that I see happening is asylum is going to be a lot harder to get. We saw restrictions on asylum last time. Expect to see that happening as well. We get a lot of questions like, what should I file for a J-1 waiver or asylum? You can do both at the same time, but I do expect asylum restrictions to increase. We also saw that there's fast tracking of initial asylum applications as well. So those lengthy processing times with asylum where you can continue to renew work authorization, that may not happen. You may not have that long, lengthy time period as well. So now I'm going to focus on legal immigration. So what is legal immigration? Legal immigration means you came in with the visa, you're maintaining your lawful status, you're still here. For instance, like if you are wanting to apply for a J-1 waiver, you're in the United States and you're married to a U.S. citizen and you're still in J-1 status or you're on F-1 status. Well, in that situation, that's legal immigration. We didn't see that being hit by the administration last time. Yes, RFEs increased. Yes, it may be more difficult to get a case approved with this administration. Even though you have the same officers that are there, there's a tone that's there that's put out from the president and then down to his appointees that, yes, we want to make immigration harder. That's why you see an increase of requests for evidence, or you see an increase in denials. So we don't see J-1 waivers being touched in terms of legally. That right will still be there. I don't think that they're going to take that away. Of course, these are all predictions, but didn't happen last time. And it's also important what the upcoming administration said, that they want to focus on people who they feel have merits to be here. And many of the GM1 waiver applicants are teachers, professors, researchers, doctors. So all of you are people who are contribute in the eyes of the Republicans. And of course, you are contributing to the US. So that right is going to still be there. Will it be more difficult? Yes. Will there be more requests for evidence? Yes. And then we also have to look at the status issues that are there as well. It's taking so long to get these cases approved. We expect it to probably take even longer with this administration. So then if you're out of status, that could also be an issue as well. And that's something we'll have to see if this administration is going to focus on people who are out of status. But they typically, from what we saw last time, they're going to focus on criminals first, people who have criminal violations. Those are the people who they generally go after initially. That's going to be the first priority enforcement. The next category that we want to look at is, what about employment-based green cards? General employment-based green cards are going to be more difficult to obtain because of the prevailing wage. So they tried to attack the prevailing wage last time by raising the prevailing wage, let's say, increasing it by 50. If software engineers making 100,000, an immigrant would have to make 150,000 or 200,000. That will be a possibility with this administration as well, with employment-based green card attacking the prevailing wage. Also with H-1Bs as well, that could be an issue as well. If you're looking at applying for a national interest waiver, I think that's an area, something that's seen as meritorious. You're advancing something of national importance. So I don't think that that's going to be touched. It may be harder to obtain. There might be more requests for evidence, but I don't think that's going to be touched as a whole. The definition or the interpretation of what national importance could change. So if you're focusing, for instance, on something like stem cells, that might be less popular with this administration. We'll have to see if that trickles down to the adjudicators. Renewable energy has been something that's been popular. We'll have to see, since Trump wants to focus on oil drilling, whether that's going to be a factor. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because he's also supported by Elon Musk as well. And we'll see how he plays and toes that line. EB-1As in the last administration, what we saw happen is a lot of requests for evidence. So that made it more challenging to get EB-1A, even though I think it's still going to remain in the law and the Immigration and Nationality Act. And of course, you're at the top of your field. So I don't see that being touched, but I do see more requests for evidence happening during this administration. H-1B visas. What we saw happen last time, and it was after a couple of years onwards towards the end of his administration, which I found interesting because Trump employs a lot of immigrants himself in his businesses. Nevertheless, what's interesting is the way that they attacked H-1Bs was just by making it harder, attacking the definition of what a specialty occupation is. We could see that definition narrowing down. Also, I think it'll be harder to get extensions. That was the case with this prior administration as well. And as I mentioned earlier, like attacking the prevailing wage. So a lot of high-tech companies rely on H-1B workers because they cannot find other talent. It's not necessarily changing the statutes, but it's doing it in I can't think of a better word, but passive aggressive, but doing it in these incremental ways that attack the H-1B program. I could see that happening with this administration as well. So that's what we expect to see with legal immigration. Also, I haven't talked about marriage-based immigration or family-based petitions. So if you filed a marriage-based green card in this administration, you saw a lot of cases that didn't have to go for interview, which I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, because it's all based off of paper. And some people don't have a lot of joint documents and they're making a decision without even interviewing you, and you don't get to tell your story. But many of our clients have not had to go to interviews. I think interviews will happen again for marriage-based immigration cases in a higher frequency, and for family-based applications. And that could be a positive thing, because you can then tell your story. I know, of course, you're going to be nervous when you go to the interview for many of you. But the positive aspect of that is that you also get to explain your relationship, explain your story, maybe answer questions about why you may not have a joint bank account. Maybe you just don't want to have a joint bank account, and you have the right to do that, but on paper, that looks pretty bad to the officer. So you get the opportunity to be able to explain that. Now, we talked a lot about the negatives. What about the positives? Well, Trump also did say offhandedly that he's going to give green cards to students. He had some great reasoning, which I think is really important for our country, because we are training people here in the US. We're educating them. We attract the best and the brightest. And that's why we've advanced so far in this country. Look at many of the CEOs, some of the high-tech companies that were originally immigrants. By offering people green cards, that we're keeping them in the United States. So if that was going to happen, that would be huge. That would be a big benefit for our country and for students. Now, what is also interesting is we saw the last time he was president that students who were out of status were also receiving notices to appear. They were really cracking down on students. So it kind of, those two things conflict, but he did say that he wants to give green cards to students. We'll see what that means. We'll see if he really actually does move forward with that. But that's going to what he was talking about. What he wants to focus on meritorious immigration. So students who are here, who are educated, that's definitely meritorious. Let's give them a path to be able to continue to stay in the United States. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Bye for now. See you next time.